Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to show you a technique using just one light source. That is rim lighting. I'm going to produce the classic rim-lit bottle shot. And for that, of course, we will need a bottle. So I have this rather splendid bottle of red wine, very shiny glass, embossed, all sorts of reflections going on here. It'll be a bit of a challenge. But this makes a very good exercise and it's relatively easy to do yourself. So let's get on. I'm going to use a full frame camera with a 24-70 zoom on it. I'm going to wind this round to the 70 end so that I can end up with a relatively good distance between the camera and the subject. So for instance, if we had our subject on this end of the table like this, this gives us a good working distance with this at the 70 end. Okay, now this camera is tethered into this PC and this PC will be running, when I turn it on, here we are, Capture One software. This will have complete control over the camera as soon as I turn it on. So let's turn the camera on. There we go. The camera's on and the software's recognized the camera. We can see in here this is Canon EOS and this is the shutter speed, ISO, aperture, and of course I can operate the shutter. There we go. Now obviously with just the house lights as we've got on at the moment, there's not a lot to see. So let's set this up. Just pointing at the bottle. There we go. So we'll just take that. Yes, you can just about make out on here a few little highlights from the studio lights in here, but nothing too substantial. Okay. So we have our camera, our subject. The next thing would be the lighting. So for this you can use any type of light source. I'm going to use this studio flash. This has the advantage of having a model light. I'll just turn that on. There we go. So this will give an indication of what would happen with the flash before it fires, which is quite useful. So we'll turn that out for the time being. In fact, I'll turn the whole thing off for the time being. There we go. And that is going to go on this stand at the back here. Okay. So the next thing would be a relatively small softbox. This is just a 2 foot by 2 foot, 600 mil by 600 millimeter softbox. For this type of work, this is actually on the very small side, but I wanted particularly to show this so that I can show you a little trick to make the apparent size of a softbox bigger. And it also does another thing for us as well, but I'll come to that in a minute. Okay, so there we have our softbox, our subject, and our camera. So the next bit would be some form of flash trigger. I'm going to use this remote, which gives control over the flash, stops me having to go around and adjust it on the on the item, I can adjust everything from here. So I'll just turn that on. There we go. Right. So if we are about ready for a test, let's turn that on. There we go. And I'll just fire that off. There we go. That works. And we'll have a go at capturing an image. Right. So there's all sorts of things wrong with this. Haven't set anything up yet, really. Haven't really had a thought about it. This isn't a very good way of taking a picture of a bottle of wine. The first thing I would do is pay some attention to the surface that the bottle is resting on. If we just move that out of the way for a second, what I have here is a sheet of black Perspex. Now this is very handy for photographic use. You can get it in all sorts of DIY shops or anywhere that makes displays, that type of thing, shop displays. It does tend to collect dust very easily. So I'll just give it a bit of a wipe down before we start. Obviously, if you were doing this for real, as it were, you would pay more attention to making sure that everything is absolutely spotless. There we go. Okay. I'll place my bottle back on here. Move the light in. And fire another test. There we go. You're starting to see an effect now. If you just look carefully on the edge here, you can see that there is a hard line all the way around the outside of this bottle. That's caused by the very edges of the softbox. It's a reflection of this bit of the softbox, causing a very hard edge in the glass. That isn't really a nice look, and it's not really what we're trying to go for. The other thing that I would notice about this is that the angle isn't correct. The composition, because the camera is up here, is slightly off. So what I would do is drop that down so that it's almost level. We are actually looking down on the bottle ever so slightly. I'll just set that so that we've got a good margin all the way around, somewhere around there. Might not be quite level, but we'll see how we go. Yes, much better. It is a little skewed, so let me just straighten that up a little. There we go, just like that. Better. There we are. Right. So now we have a bottle, very hard edge. Doesn't look brilliant. So what we need to do to make our rim light is use one of these. Now this, whether you can see that, is a cardboard cutout of that bottle. And I made that by tracing the outline of the bottle, but allowing an extra 1.5 to 2 centimeters all the way around. So what I'm going to do with this is just stick it on the back here with some blue tack. go. Just like that. Okay. So now we just need to line this up, and it is quite critical that you do line this up properly. Right. Now you should be able to see that there is a very narrow white line almost all the way around this bottle. I say almost because it's not quite in every place. That's because at the moment there is a relatively large distance here between this surface of the softbox and the back of the table. So what I'm going to do is move this in so it's very close. So it's almost touching. There is a distance between the bottle, obviously, you can see that on this camera, hopefully, and the cutout. So as I do that, there we go. Now we have a rim which is going all the way around the bottle. But there's also a lot of flare, and it's not particularly neat and tidy yet. So one of the things that I need to do, looking at that, is just move this over ever so slightly, just to center it properly on the silhouette. There we go. Possibly a little too far. Right. There we go. That's better. Now all this excess, all the white parts of the image here, that's just causing flare in the lens. So to mitigate that, I've made up these, which are basically bits of black card, and we're going to use these like flags to flag off the excess light so that it's no longer a problem. And it also cleans the image up a bit. So we'll just put these in like this. And we'll do a test. Okay, just move that in a bit more. This one just wants a bit more. There we go. And you should be able to see on this image now that we have a nice line going all the way around the bottle. Well, I say nice, it's not that nice. One of the things about this, like we mentioned before, is that classic rim lights tend to have a gradation across them. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is just move this light back a long way, a little way, like that. And we're going to deploy this. This is diffusion paper, tracing paper if you like. This is actually a plastic one. You can use cloth as long as it's thin enough. Polyester bed sheets, that sort of thing. So what I'll do is just put this up here, more or less straight. And just pop this roll on like this. Pull this down. So now what we have is in effect a much larger area where the flash will emanate from. I'm just having a look at that to see if it's more or less in the middle. I don't think it is. It wants to come over slightly, something like that. Okay, so now if I do a test, right, what we can see on this image now is that you have a very fine line all the way around the bottle, which is gradation off into the actual bottle itself, which is making a much nicer image. Obviously, by moving the light back, I have also taken quite a lot of power out of it. So the two things, the energy that's coming out of the light and its distance, are very closely related, as I hope you all know. So if I just move this a little bit closer in, just disappear around the back while I do that. What this will do is, in effect, increase the size and definition of this line around the bottle. There we go, that's looking quite nice now. In fact, that is so good, I'm going to keep that one. So I'll just put a little star on that one. We'll come back to that in a minute. So, very simple. All I've got here, like we mentioned before, camera, flags, subject, cutout, very important, something to diffuse the light source, and then the light source itself around the back. Okay, so the edge of the bottle is looking nice, but the rest of the bottle is a little dull. So we said we were going to do this with one light. I could add another light, but maybe you've only got one light. But we've got an awful lot of light coming out of the whole of this area. So what we can do is recycle some of it. So what I've got here, this is a Perspex mirror. You could use a normal mirror. You could use just a piece of white paper if you wanted to. So all I'm going to do is recycle some of this just by holding this in, just at an angle. I don't know whether you can see the angle that I've got on there. And fire the shutter, which will then place a little bit of light, as you can see on the image here, on the bottle surface itself. So that's okay, but it's possibly a little dark. So what I'm going to do is just add about a stop, one stop of energy to the flash. We'll just hold that back in again. And take that again. Yeah, so now we've got a bit brighter. That's looking quite nice. Perhaps another half a stop. Let's just add half a stop to that. There we go. Hold the mirror in. And there we go. All right, now in the image here, you can see that there is a bit of a flare at the top here, but otherwise, not too bad at all. In fact, I think I will probably go for that. So I'm going to put another little star on that image. So now we have captured two images. So what I'm going to do now is the two images that I've starred, I will take straight into, well, I say straight into Photoshop. I will make them into a Photoshop file within this software. So we'll do that one. There we go. That's that done. And now we'll do the previous one. And process that. There we go. Now swap out of Capture One into Photoshop. I'll just open the PSDs. Okay, so now we've got our two images in Photoshop. So what I'm going to do here is make a layered pair. So I will select all, edit, copy. There are lots of different ways to do this, but this is the way I prefer to do it, and edit, paste. Okay, so now I have the two images next to each other like that. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is put a layer mask on here. Double click the layer mask itself and invert it. And now go over to a white brush. Maybe make that a little, actually no, I'll leave it as it is. Now as I paint this through, what I'm actually doing is reinstating the layer that's underneath. This is possibly a little big, so I'll just change the size. And I can bring in all the detail on this embossing. This. There we go. And perhaps a little bit on the top of the bottle as well. Just like that. Obviously you'd be taking more care than I am because I'm doing it in a bit of a rush, but you get the idea. There we go, just clean up the edges. Okay, now I'm going to add another layer. Change my brush again. There we go. Now I'm painting black. So what I will do is just take this and just paint in all the bits that we don't actually need. There we go. And by doing this, we're going to end up with a composite image. Let's go straight down here. Be very careful not to go too far. And just clean it up right down to the bottom. There. Now make my brush a bit bigger, a bit harder. Just make sure that I've got everything as black as it needs to be. There we go. And now I can just bring that in. Over to one side. People like that sort of thing. You could always add another wine glass or something else down this side here. So kind of okay. Just need to fill that last little bit down there. There we go. And there we have what I think is a fairly decent rendition of our bottle of wine with a very nice rim light. So I hope that's been some use, and I hope you take the idea of what I was trying to do there and run with it yourselves and have a go at doing something similar. Obviously, by changing the subject and the mask at the back, for instance, you could always add a wine glass with a wine glass silhouette in exactly the same way, and you'll end up with just the edge of the glass showing up. That's for another time. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.